You have a piano piece. You want the orchestra version. How to make it happen? Let's learn from the master, Ravel. Hello everybody, my name is Yang Yang. I'm a composer and a learning strategist who loves turning patterns into tools. And today I'm mainly a learning strategist, looking for ways to unburden our mind and avoid getting overwhelmed. That leads right into the topic I will explore today, the orchestration procedure. Orchestration deals with a huge amount of information. Where do we start? How do we organize our thinking without drowning? I believe it's a challenge every composer or orchestrator has faced at some point, if not all the time. As always, I turn to the master Ravel for answers. Let's go uncover how he makes decisions when orchestrating this piece. Let's take a look at the piano score and see what clues it gives us about orchestration. When I first listened to this piano tune, what stands out to me is the alternation of two contrasting colors. Let's walk through it. 11. Cold, harsh, haunting, lack of gravity. 12. Warm, mellow, deep, resonant, soft, and pleasant. 13. Cold and harsh again, and stronger now. 14. Warm, deep, pleasant, brighter yet still soft. 15. The cold color returns, but more emotional. 16. Warmth again, this time with a hint of uncertainty blending in. 17. The cold color intensifies, strong, emotional, urgent. 18. And finally, the soft, warm, lively sound comes back. And that gives us the basic palette on which the orchestral version is built. Now let's take a closer look at these two groups one by one. First, the cold and harsh group. The rhythm and phrasing in these four sections are identical. They sit in the high register. Notice this octave gesture in the left-hand accompaniment. It begins on the bass note and crosses over the right-hand melody. So the supporting harmony is vertically closed and compact, except for 17, understandably, the climax. And the dynamics are generally strong, except for rehearsal mark 11, which opens the piece. The warm and pleasant group. The melody in 12 and 16 sits low, while 14 and 18's melody sits higher. This pattern contrasts with the cold sections where the same melody keeps getting higher and growing more tense each time it returns. Two totally different personalities, aren't they? In this warm group, the bass notes stay low, and the accompaniment is deep, open, and resonant, with a clear emphasis on this danceable waltz groove. Again, the opposite of the cold sections. And there's one distinctive sound here in 16 that weaves a bit of cold color into this warm section, that pair of major second notes. Finally, the dynamics are consistently soft. And what about the transitions? The cold and harsh sections gradually warm up as they lead into the pleasant, mellow ones. This beautiful line acts like a bridge between the two colors. And as the music warms, the dynamics soften as well. Now, from the mellow sections, the music swells and intensifies as it returns to the harsh sounding tone. And here, it simply fades out, closing the first half of the tune. Now we have a more detailed framework built entirely from the feelings we perceive and the patterns that we observe without racking our brain and getting lost in complexity. Simple and clear. With this in hand, we can start asking questions about instrument choices. Let's start with the lead melody. Which instrument can express this coldness in this register and at this dynamic level? What options do we have for depicting a warm sound in this register at this soft dynamic? Which instrument could express this strong but not yet full-formed emotion in such a high register at this dynamic level? How about the accompaniment? What accompaniment options can support this low, soft melody, keep the waltz rhythmic feel, and sound deep and open in this register, yet remain soft enough not to overshadow the lead? How about those special elements? This one. What instruments could perform this octave leap gesture smoothly in this register and at this dynamic? And this one, what can capture this dissonant, cold, percussive sound in this register at this dynamic? With those considerations in mind, we're now ready to look at Ravel's choices. For the cold sound, Ravel gives the lead melody to the oboe. The line sits right in the oboe's optimal range, and the instrument can easily handle both soft and strong dynamics. For the lyrical warm sections, he chooses the flute. In its low register, the flute sounds rich and warm and quiet, perfect for the dynamics that we mapped out. In the high register, it becomes singing and sweet and can also execute the soft dynamic. Now the accompaniment. For the flute's warm and lyrical sections, Ravel chooses the harp as the major accompaniment. As a plucked string instrument, the harp gives a clear rhythmic attack. In this middle low register, it sounds deep and resonant, creating a warm color that fits the character of the sections. And it's soft enough not to overpower the flute. To further enhance this warm atmosphere, Ravel brings in a soft string pad under the flute line. At the bottom, double bass pizzicato and sustained cellos, strengthening the foundation and deepening the resonance. Together with the flute melody, these three layers of accompaniment convey this warm feeling. In my previous episodes, I analyzed every note in the orchestra equally for one single purpose, to trace their origins back to the piano piece. But in the actual orchestra sound, the notes are not equal. They sit at different levels in our perceptual hierarchy. This hierarchy doesn't just shape how we hear the music, it also shapes the procedure of how we orchestrate it. The melody, for example, sits at the top, It leads and everything else is built around it. Like choosing the flute here in a low register. This single decision immediately narrows down the accompaniment options. Even the accompaniment figures have their own internal hierarchy. The backbone is the harp. On its own, it's sufficient to support the flute rhythmically and harmonically. The string pad and the pizzicato then enhance this already complete structure, adding color and depth. You see, there is a logic to this decision-making process, a structure we can follow. Experienced orchestrators who have established the orchestral sound in their head may be able to handle all the information at once. But for those of us still learning, how do we process all those informations without overwhelming ourselves? We follow the hierarchy. We make one decision at a time, let the decision of the most prominent, most obvious element naturally guides the next. Let's follow this decision-making strategy and take a look at the chord sections. With the first oboe carrying the top note, Ravel places another oboe and a bassoon for the harmony. When we enter the second chord section, the dynamic becomes stronger. At this point, there are two options. First, let the original group simply play louder, or take advantage of the orchestra's forces and add more instruments. Ravel chooses the second approach. He reinforces the sound by adding flutes and clarinets, a group with a different timbral color. Moving on to the next chord, yet emotional section. Ravel gives the lead to the first violins, with the second violins in divisi underneath. This is completely logical. What instrument could express that emotional but still restrained intensity in such a high register better than the violins? And they're good at the dynamics too. Plus, by this point, we have already heard the oboe group and its expanded version. So a change of color is needed before it returns. And return it does in the climax. With an expanded span, everybody sits in its ideal register. What about the moments between those anchor points, the transitions? Ravel introduces new color groups to mirror the changing dynamics and character. Notice how this simple three-voice figure evolving as it travels through time. Isn't it beautiful? This brings me back to how we actually organize orchestration. Maybe instead of thinking vertically, section by section, we can also think horizontally, tracing one idea and coloring its evolution across time. And maybe that could be our focal point, guiding how the rest of the orchestration evolves. Once again, the hierarchical way of thinking. Just as the chord sections evolve over time, the accompaniment for the solo flute in the warm sections also changes. Ravel consistently pairs the flute with the harp, but the harp also adapts to the personality the flute introduces in each moment. Comparing the piano score of these two sections, the left-hand accompaniment is similar. Aside from 14 having a slightly thicker chord than 12, everything else is the same: dynamic, rhythm, register, and the span. The real difference lies in the melody. One is warm and low, which leaves a small space above the bass. The other is bright and high, which opens up a much larger space between the melody and the bass. Consequently, here we get light harmony with consistent movement. And here, dense harmony with an expanding, contracting motion. And here, Ravel treats it the same way as in 14, as the flute still has that lively color. But it's in a lower register, which naturally pulls the harp notes down as well. The bottom notes are too low that they violate the lower interval limits. So Ravel just leaves them out. Once again, the melody, the top of the hierarchy, determines how the harp is orchestrated. No guesswork, just clear logic. In 16, the two harps, being the primary accompaniment instruments, take on this essential element. The element that mixes a cool shimmer into the flute's warmth. And to match the dynamics and that silvery shimmer, these notes are played as harmonics, pure and a gentle sound. Now, the layers of the string pad and the pizzicato. I'd like to place them back into the bigger picture of how Ravel uses the strings across the whole piece. You have probably come across many descriptions of the string section, the backbone of the orchestra, the most versatile group, the section that can cover anything and everything. But what do these descriptions actually mean in practice? How do we translate them into orchestration decisions? I myself find writing for string section very challenging exactly because of this almost unlimited power. The problem isn't what they can do, it's how do you even begin to narrow down your choices? Let's go search for answers in Ravel's score. As you can see, the strings are playing for the entire time. Indeed, the backbone of the orchestra. They take on 4 tasks. First, bass function. Pizzicato on the bass note to emphasize the downbeat, plus a sustained tone that either supports the pizzicato or stands on its own. Second, harmonic padding. Third, melody, carrying the lead melody or a harmonized melodic line. Last, a special element. The recurring octave leap figure that returns throughout the piece. A fascinating thing is that each instrument group cycles through almost all of these functions at one time or another, except double basses, understandably. Let's take a look at them one by one. The first violins. Solo melody, octave leap gesture, bass pizzicato, octave leap gesture, harmonized melody, harmonic pad, harmonized melody, and harmonic pad. The second violin, octave leap gesture, harmonic pad, octave leap, bass sustain, harmonic pad under flute solo, harmonic pad under the first violins, octave leap, harmonic pad, bass sustain, and harmonic pad. The violas, bass pizzicato, octave leap, bass sustain, harmonic pad, octave leap, solo melody, harmonic pad, bass pizzicato, harmonic pad, octave leap, solo melody, and harmonic pad. The cellos, bass pizzicato, bass sustain, octave leap, and harmonic pad. The double basses, bass pizzicato, bass sustain, and a part of the harmonic pad. With this kind of role swapping, it can feel pretty random who plays what and when. But can we see any pattern? First, notice who's doing the heavy lifting. The middle strings, the second violins, violas, and the cellos when the double basses are present. They take on most of the harmonic pad work. The outer strings, the first violins, and the double basses are used with more restraint. They show up earlier here, but they don't make their full impact until the second half of the tune, when the emotional high register passages need the first violins and the broad, deep low end calls for the double basses in arco. Now, we all know that those 4-string instruments have overlapping registers, where the playability is not a problem for many music figures. So the relative register becomes the guiding factor. For those non-primary accompaniment figures, Ravel assigns them to whichever string group sits in the right relative position at that moment. Here, the pizzicato from the top to the bottom, the first violins, the violas, the cellos, and the double basses. Same with the sustain, the second violins, the viola, the cellos, and the double basses. Same with the octave leap gesture. The first violins, the second violins, the violas, and the cellos. There are a few special spots that further demonstrate this point. Here, the violas move up because the violins are occupied with the melody above. Or here, the first violins moves down right above the harmonic pad played by the violas and the second violins. Or here, the cellos, normally playing the sustained bass note under the middle C, now take it higher up. It's still under the upper strings in the relative position, with the second violins on its octave gesture and violas finishing their line from the previous section right above. I find to visualize where each string sits relative to the others in the register really helpful, especially when everyone is rotating through almost all the functions. It's more efficient to just follow the relative position in the register and hand them to whoever is available. And this cycles back to the idea of hierarchy. The way Ravel orchestrates the melody and the harmonic pads is what determines which instruments take on those lower priority figures. Naturally, the relative register approach doesn't apply to figures that call for a more deliberate consideration, like here. In this harmonic pad, the second violins are placed between the violas. Or here, the cellos are higher than the violas. Those voice-crossing choices are driven by timbre. The sound of the lead instrument in a group usually dominates the overall color. Here, Ravel wants a warmer sound from violas and a more resonant sound from cellos. Now compare this spot. In the same register, the second violins are above the violas. Why the difference? Because the melody here is brighter. It makes sense to support it with a brighter sounding harmonic pad. One last thing I want to talk about is the string playing technique. Because of the overall delicacy of the tune, strings play with mutes for the entire time. In 16, where the cool shimmer meets the lyrical warmth, the whole string section plays on the fingerboard to expand upon harp's pure harmonics, creating this airy and ethereal soundscape for the low flute solo. By the way, this is my favorite section. To me, it's the true climax of the whole tune. The strings also use harmonics for some of the octave leap figures, giving that glassy and pure quality when needed. You see, playing technique serves the emotion. They sit below the emotion in hierarchy, not the other way around. Look at this string map, a result of Ravel's artistic choices guided by his logical mind. Now we almost have a full picture. Notice this layering. Strings harmonize the melody in chord sections. Solo flute and harp accompaniment in warm sections. Additional available instruments are added to enhance the elements in this picture. Bass sustain, harmonic pad, octave gesture, and enhance the melody in these two crescendo transitions. This kind of hierarchical decision-making naturally leads to a very organized result. Every instrument and every note it plays has a clear reason to be there. It takes away so much of the stress that comes from guesswork. No guesswork here. I hope you found this video helpful. As you can imagine, it takes a lot of time and effort to put everything together like this. If you enjoy my work and want to support what I'm doing, I'm on Buy Me a Coffee. Even though I don't drink coffee, I drink tea. You will find all the details in the description below. Thank you so much.